It's March, week 3, and it's the perfect time to be planting these 10 vegetables into the ground now. March is one of my favourite months of the year because when I look around our new dig garden at this moment in time, everything that's here is going to feed us for the next 3 months. And that's great, don't get me wrong. Really happy about that. But now it's new beginnings. We have our first opportunity to plant something into the plots for 2025. If you live in a climate where it's still close to freezing, very cold, you may just have to delay. We garden in Zone 9A. That means that we're able to get these 10 vegetables away and give us a very, very productive garden. The first thing we're going to start with are onions. And we grew 2 varieties this year. One was called Globo, the other was called Red Baron. And we've had excellent germination, and they're now of a size where we can plant them out into our plots. We multi-sow our onions, and there are as many as 6 or 7 plants in each cell. Well, a lot of people, they say that you should let these get to about 5 or 6 inches tall before you pop them out into their final growing positions. But I've always found that the younger something is when it goes into your plots, the better it transplants. There is more chance of transplanting shock as the plant gets older. It's used to its surroundings and it likes where it grows. We've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. Before then, like most other people, we would let our vegetables get to a good, really big size before they went out into the plots. But that means more compost, because you're potting them on to keep them going. And they're on your bench a lot longer when myself and Mrs. W can do this module to get the next seedlings away. I've dipped my holes. They're ready to be transplanted now. The roots are at the bottom of the module tray. And it's a thing I find really easy when you start these off early in module trays. They're easily to transplant. They've had no damage from slugs or any other pest. And when it comes to planting, it's as simple as popping them in the hole. And they'll grow away nicely from there. There's 4 rows of multi-sown onions in this bed. That's the best part of 176 onions, Mrs. W.
Lovely.
White ones. In this final row, there are 11 singles. And the reason for that is that I need to defend my trophy this year. If you've been following our channel for a while, you'll know that last year we won Best in Show for our onions, and also Best Onions. We had to get 4 that were more or less the same size, and yeah, we won that. So I need to defend that trophy again this year, and that's what they're there for. Now, we have unfortunately seen the allium leaf miner about here. Our leeks from last year actually were very, very poor. They'd been attacked by allium leaf miner. So I now need to take my own advice, because we made a video about it last year, and ensure that these are covered while that particular pest is about. Have a good productive garden, rows work really well. It allows you to get a hoe between there and to remove the weeds as and when they come. And it helps you to design your garden so that you know exactly what's going in its correct place. You can give it the right spacings. And when you do plant in rows, what you do need is a length of line. These are just 2 bits of wood that Mrs. W has found, and she's tied some string to it. It just means that we can keep those rows nice and straight. Into this bed will be our first brassicas of the season. They will give us a harvest during the month of June. First thing we're going to do is to plant a couple of Savoy King. And 2 Calibris. And also 2 cauliflowers. That's the variety called Skipper. Now we already have some turnips that are in the new raised beds that we made. But because these are not going to be ready until June, that gives us ample space to actually plant some turnips into here. And by this point, these brassicas will then need the room to start to spread. So these are a catch crop, and the idea is that we'll harvest these before the brassicas need the space. Now, as always, the turnips are our favourites, which are Tokyo Cross, and they're multi-sown. So there could be 5 or 6 plants in each cell. These are brassicas, so for us, we're going to have to cover them. We do have pigeons about here in the woodland towards the back of the garden. They're probably circling around even now, thinking there is something nice for us to eat. But a little bit later on in the year, we will have the pest of the cabbage white butterfly. And if they're not covered, it will lay eggs onto any brassica. And then when the eggs hatch into their caterpillar form, they will munch their way through any brassica leaves, and you will have no harvest. So it's a good idea to cover them anyway, because then you haven't got to come back in May time and do that job all over again. Also, while these plants are still quite young, and it's the same with the onions, those protective covers will just keep the worst of any weather that we might still get to come towards the end of March and into April. It is spring, but winter very often, I've found, still has a sting in her tail. The next thing that I want to plant are potatoes. Mid-March, mid to late March is our time to begin planting potatoes. Potatoes, they want to be planted around about 3 to 4 weeks before your last average frost date, so that when they pop up, most of the danger of frost has gone. In our case, that's mid to late March. Our last average frost date should come around mid-April. I've filled my container 1/3 full with compost and added some organic fertiliser to it. Next, I shall lay 2 Charlotte potatoes in this case. We do love the taste of our Charlotte potatoes. And then I shall fill the container another 1/3 full. Then I shall lay 2 more potatoes on top of that, opposite sides to where I put the first 2. Then I shall fill the container to within 1 inch of the top. Now, I've got a lot of potatoes actually to be planting. Not only these lovely Charlotte potatoes, but also our main crop potatoes. I've something like 80 containers to fill and plant. So, if you want to know a little bit more about potatoes, then do make sure you watch right to the very end of the video when the end screens appear, and you will see a link to our how to grow potatoes from seed potato to table. I already put some multi-sown onions into this new raised bed. The next lot of vegetables that I'm going to plant out, they're going to go into these new raised beds, but they can all go out into your outside plots. Now, I'm going to start with some greyhound cabbage. And in this raised bed we can fit 4 in. Now you can space these anywhere between 10 and 12 inches. And they'll be fine. It just depends on how big a head you want on your cabbages. And then next we want to put some pak choy in. Now we're harvesting pak choy at this moment from inside the polytunnel, which are very, very nice. So this will serve as a follow-on crop. Now, oriental greens, they grow best in the cooler season. So it's a good time actually to be popping them out into your outdoor beds or into your raised beds, because by the time we sort of get to late April and into May, the temperatures will start to be warming in here and in the greenhouse, and they don't like the heat. Now these are a variety called Yushu, and we see very, very little bolting of this particular variety, which is why we continue to grow it. Next, I want to plant some spring or salad onions. Now the Holland red blood, the germination was terrible on these, weren't they, Mrs. W? They really were.
Not good at all.
Yeah, you can see they don't look good. But these Snow Queen, absolutely marvellous. So for now, we're going with the Snow Queen. Now, just as with all of our onions, these are no different. They're multi-sown, and usually within the module I've put, well, at least 6 in. I aim for 8 if I can, and then when you come to harvest them, you've got your bunch of onions all ready for you to harvest. Next, I want to get some lettuce into these beds. Still enjoying the lettuce out of the greenhouse, which was the Winter Density and the Arctic King. But they're starting to form their hearts now, aren't they, Mrs. W?
They are, yes. Yeah.
So we need to get the next lettuce underway so that we can continue to enjoy it. Mrs. W transplanted these, a couple of weeks or so ago. The little gem have come on really quite well. So I'm going to put some little gem into here. In the other 2 raised beds I've got, then I shall start to plant out some of the others as and when they come ready. What have we got here? Lolo Rossa and Webb's Wonderful. Next, I want to plant out some beetroot. These were sown back in February. And for some reason, the Burpee's Golden, well, we didn't get very good germination, you can see. Most of the cells are empty. In fact, all but one are empty. We sowed some again in March, and got full germination on those ones, didn't we? So I don't quite know what we did wrong there, but there you go. That's what it is. So let's pop these in here. And you can see we've got some hoops that we've put onto these. None of this actually particularly needs covering, unless we start to see some damage, in which case we then have the facility to do that. We don't normally get our lettuce eaten by anything. This first row with the turnips and the radishes, they haven't been touched. So hopefully they will be okay. However, this raised bed certainly shall be covered. It has brassicas in it and multi-sown onions. So we want to keep the allium leaf miner away, and hungry pigeons away from these brassicas. Just planted the next lot of spring salad onions, and these have come out of that bed that's in front of the polytunnel. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there in a bunch, and they were overwintered. They were sown last August, and well, they've been ready to harvest for a couple of weeks or so now, haven't they?
Yeah.
We've got plenty of them, so we still have a lovely onion taste to enjoy, along with the stored onions indoors. Now do let us know in the comments, is March the month that you begin to plant out? And what are you going to be planting out into your plots? Hopefully they're all ready to go like ours are, and it's a nice straightforward job. But don't forget, with some of the things that you're going to be planting out in March, don't forget to cover them. In some cases, like the onions that we've planted, just to keep them so that the worst of the weather is off of them. Onions are actually okay with frost, unless it's a really severe one, but they don't like the cold winds. That often checks their growth. And by just covering them, either like we did with some Enviromesh, or even with some fleece, that will just help them settle into their new homes much more quickly. Although we've planted quite a lot of vegetables out today, 10 of them in fact, you may be eager to know what may be coming next in their growth cycle. And if you are, and you want to get a bit of a heads up, then watch this playlist next, our How to Grow from Seed to Table playlist. Have a great rest of your gardening week, and we shall see you very soon.